Okay, so we shall continue with the chapter anti-diarrheals. Okay, that is the treatment for diarrhea. So we have seen what are the different measures for the treatment of diarrhea. That is, there are three main approaches. The first one is the rehydration, that is maintenance of the fluid and electrolyte balance. Basically, depending upon the severity, you can select the intravenous or the oral rehydration. The next approach is maintenance of the nutrition, which is very important, which people do not follow. Thinking that they are suffering from diarrhea, they start starving, okay, which is actually it may be harmful. Okay, so maintenance of proper nutrition is equally important. And the third measure which we had started is the drug therapy. Okay, under drug therapy also we have seen that there are three approaches under the drug treatment. There are certain specific drug treatment, okay, that is specific antidiarrheals, which are targeting towards particular infections, that is microorganisms. So we have seen against which microorganism which particular antibiotic is effective, okay, so which are supposed to be used, which are the situations in which actually antimicrobials are not required. Then second approach under the drug therapy was the probiotics, the use of probiotics, okay. So attenuated microorganisms are also used, okay, as a supplementary treatment to specifically replenish the normal flora of the gut. And the third approach under drug treatment is non-specific antidiarrheals. So as the name implies, non-specific. So these are the drugs which are used in generalized in certain situation. It doesn't depend upon what type of organism is actually involved in the infection. So specifically these are the drugs which are utilized mainly in the non-infectious or non-invading microorganism type of infections, okay. So these are again grouped into three, that is absorbents and adsorbents is the first subclass under non-specific antidiarrheals. Second one is the anti-secretory drugs, and the third one is anti-motility drugs. So all the terms, as you can see, these are self-explanatory, okay. Absorbents meaning something which will absorb the water and swell. Adsorbents meaning here there is surface phenomenon which is involved. Then anti-secretory meaning secretions, mainly in your GI tract. So increase in the secretions may also result in diarrhea. So anti-secretory drugs will reduce the secretions. And anti-motility drugs meaning they will decrease the GI motility so that more time is available for the absorption of the water and electrolytes, so that properly formed stools will be produced. Okay, so all the terms are self-explanatory. Let us see the individual drugs under all these categories. To start with the first one, that is absorbents and adsorbents. Under that we will first consider the absorbent. So as I have told you earlier, these are actually the colloidal bulk forming substances. Okay, that is they have the property to absorb the water and swell. Examples like Isfagula, then the methyl cellulose, carboxymethyl cellulose. So these are all the bulk forming agents, that is they can absorb the water and swell. Okay, so these drugs also we will discuss under the treatment for constipation. Over there also these particular drugs are utilized. Okay, now generally how these particular drugs help in diarrhea is that they modify the consistency and frequency of the stools. Okay, so in case of passage of the watery stools, what these substances will do, they will absorb the water, swell, and properly formed stools will be generated. Okay, as such they do not reduce the water and electrolyte loss. Only thing is the consistency and frequency of the stools which is disturbed under diarrhea, that will be improved. Okay, they are also utilized in certain situations of IBS, that is inflammatory bowel syndrome. So conditions wherein diarrheal phase is involved under IBS, okay, and to improve the consistency of the feces in colostomy patient, that is in whom the part of the colon may be removed. So in such individuals, the consistency of the feces or the stools may be improved. So these are the situations in which actually these drugs are used. Apart from that, as I've told you earlier, isfagula and other bulk forming agents, these are also utilized in the constipatory phase also, both constipation and diarrhea phase of the IBS. Also it can help to reduce the abdominal pain. Then coming to the next part, that is the adsorbents. So as the name implies, they will start adsorbing something on their surface. Okay, examples under this include kaolin, pectin, etapalgite. So all these have adsorbent property, that is they can adsorb. It's a surface phenomenon. Absorb meaning entire particular substance may start absorbing. It's a within the phenomenon, and this is a surface phenomenon. So it can adsorb the bacterial toxins which are present in the gut. So also they can coat or protect the mucosa. Okay, so further absorption of these bacterial toxins may be prevented. But these agents, when they were introduced, they were quite popular, but later on they are found to be not very much efficacious. So even in certain countries they have also been banned because they do not produce any better efficacy as compared to the other drugs. Okay, so they are banned also, withdrawn also from certain countries. Then the next subclass under these particular non-specific antidiarrheal drugs is anti-secretory drugs. So as the name implies, these are the drugs which will inhibit the secretions into the GIT, specifically in the large intestines. Okay, so because of reduction in the secretions, obviously the water content of the stools will be reduced and they will produce the antidiarrheal effect. Okay, now first drug under this category is Resacadrotril. Now this particular drug is administered in the form of a prodrug. Okay, and it is, once it is absorbed, it will get converted into active drug, that is thiorphan. So this is an active metabolite which is actually responsible for the anti-secretory action. Now let us see what is the mechanism of action. Okay, so as it is implied over here, it is an encaphelinase inhibitor. Okay, now encaphelinase, it is an enzyme which is involved in the degradation of endogenous opioid peptide enkephalin. We have already covered these endogenous opioid peptides under the opioid analgesics, right? At the end of the chapter we have already seen there are endogenous opioid peptides, okay, dynorphins, enkephalins and all. Okay, so these enkephalins, they act by interacting with the opioid receptors. Okay, so now these opioid peptides, okay, which are generated in the body, okay, mainly they act as the delta opioid receptor agonist. That's how they produce the anti-secretory action. Okay, and this drug thiorphan, it will inhibit the enzyme enkephalinase which is involved in the degradation of the enkephalins. So because of inhibition of the metabolizing enzyme, enkephalins levels will remain high. In turn, they will go and bind to the opioid receptor, delta receptor. They will bind and they will stimulate the receptors. Okay, so by stimulating these opioid receptors, they lower the mucosal CAMP levels, and this is how they will decrease the intestinal hypersecretion. Okay, that is, intestinal secretion will be reduced without altering the GI motility, because motility is mediated through the mu receptors. And we have seen that enkephalins, they act as delta opioid receptor agonists. So they will only reduce the secretions in the GIT. That's how they are acting as antidiarrheal. So generally these are used for short-term treatments for acute secretory diarrheas in which there is hypersecretion, increase in the secretion. That is actually responsible for the diarrhea. So in such cases, this particular drug is useful. Then this drug is also safe in children. Many of the drugs we will see, they are not safe in small children, they are contraindicated, but this drug can be used in small children. And then the T half-life of the active metabolite, it is just 3 hours, and the side effects are also mild: nausea, vomiting, drowsiness and flatulence. These are the only side effects. Next drug is bismuth subsalicylate. It is actually used as a suspension. 60 ml of this suspension is utilized every 6 hours. Okay, mainly it is thought to act by decreasing the Pg synthesis. Because of this, okay, local decrease in the Pg synthesis in the intestinal mucosa, it reduces the chloride secretion. Okay, so this is how it is supposed to reduce the secretions in the GI tract. Generally, this particular drug is used in the traveler's diarrhea. Okay, as a prophylactic, it can be used. Okay, but it is quite inconvenient, okay, to consume as well as to carry. So most of the countries are not using this particular drug. Next category is the anticholinergics, okay, under anti-secretory. So we have seen that acetylcholine is involved in the motility as well as the secretions. So obviously the anticholinergic drugs or the atropinic drugs or anti-muscarinic drugs, they will reduce both the GI motility as well as the secretions. Okay. Generally they are utilized in the conditions wherein nervous diarrhea or the drug induced diarrhea is involved, like say for example neostigmine or metoclopramide. These may induce the diarrheas, or certain neuronal disorders may also be responsible for the diarrheas, or even they can afford the symptomatic relief in dysenteries and diverticulitis also. Then the next drug is octreotide. Now this particular drug, it is a somatostatin analog and it has a little bit longer T half-life, that is 90 minutes and also has a potent anti-secretory as well as anti-motility action. So both mechanisms are involved. It can decrease the secretions also and it can reduce the GI motility also. Both the mechanisms are involved, and specifically this particular drug is utilized in diarrhea, which is as a consequence of maybe carcinoids or the tumors. Certain secretory tumors may be involved, so they are responsible for diarrhea. So to control such type of diarrheas, octreotide may be preferred. Even certain refractory diarrheas in AIDS patient which may not be responding to other anti-diarrheas, so in such cases also this drug is preferred. Then next type of drug is opioids. Okay, so opioids also have anti-motility action, plus they can also reduce the intestinal secretion. So it acts by both the mechanism, by decreasing the motility as well as by decreasing the secretion. So these opioids are mainly considered under the anti-motility drugs, that under the next subclass we will be considering it in detail. Okay, so here loperamide is quite popularly utilized. Okay, so it can reduce the secretions as well as it can decrease the motility also. Both the mechanisms are involved. Okay. Then the third subclass under non-specific antidiarrheals is anti-motility drugs. So as the name implies, they will reduce the GI motility. In addition, they have certain other actions also, like say for example they can increase the small bowel tone, small intestine tone is increased, segmenting activity is improved. Okay, so better formation of these stools may be seen. Also, of course, as the name implies, propulsive movements, that is the peristaltic movement is reduced. Secretions are also reduced. That's what we have seen in the previous section. Anti-secretory drugs also involve many of the anti-motility drugs. They have both the properties. Okay. So also because they decrease the GI motility, there is more time available for the absorption. Okay. So water and electrolyte may also be absorbed. Their absorption may also be enhanced. Okay, so these are the several ways by which they will help in reducing the frequency, and the proper formation of the stools may also be promoted. And most of the drugs involved under this is opioid drugs. Okay, so they will act through the opioid receptor. Mainly motility is controlled by the mu receptors. Okay. Delta receptors, they are mainly promoting the absorption and inhibiting the secretions in the GIT, whereas mu receptors, they are mainly increasing the absorption and decreasing the GI motility. So mu receptors are mainly involved over here. Now to start with the individual drugs, the first one is codeine. Codeine we have also covered under the opioid analgesics. Okay. So it's a naturally occurring opioid alkaloid, okay, obtained from the opium. Okay, so this particular opioid, when we had discussed over there, we have seen that constipation is quite a common side effect with this particular drug. But when codeine is used as, so that's when codeine is used as an analgesic. But when codeine is used as an antidiarrheal, that same side effect becomes a therapeutic effect. Okay, so here when codeine is given as an antidiarrheal drug, anti-motility action, okay, that is its constipatory action, it becomes a therapeutic action over here. Okay, no doubt, of course, it has certain CNS effects. It will produce CNS effects, but the dependence producing liability is rated lower. It has central effects, but lower abuse liability with this particular drug. Even side effects also are quite less severe, like nausea, vomiting and dizziness. Okay, whereas since loperamide was available, okay, codeine has almost gone out of use for diarrhea. Okay, no one prefers codeine, they prefer the loperamide. Okay, then the next drug is difenoxylate. Now here, if you can see that there are two drugs. Now atropine is also combined over here. Okay, difenoxylate in the dose of 2.5 milligram and atropine in a dose of 0.025 milligram. That is a very small amount of atropine is added to this drug difenoxylate. Actually, this difenoxylate, it is a synthetic opioid, okay, which is chemically related to pethidine, okay, and mainly used as a constipating action. Okay, so now because of its anti-motility action, it shows anti-diarrheal property, okay, but no doubt it can cross the blood-brain barrier and CNS effects do occur. That is, it has abuse liability. Okay, now to prevent the abuse of this particular drug, actually this atropine is added over here. If you can see that a very small amount is added, right? So atropine here, it is added in sub-pharmacological dose. Now why it is added? Atropine, it is an anticholinergic drug. Okay, and anticholinergic drug in higher doses, you all are aware that it produces anticholinergic side effects, right? Secretions are reduced mainly. So a lot of anticholinergic distressing symptoms will be precipitated. Now since difenoxylate has abuse liability, this atropine is added. Now here amount is very small. Normally when it is consumed, difenoxylate along with this amount of atropine, it does not produce any anticholinergic side effect. But if the person want to take this drug again and again, the person will consume more amount of atropine and atropinic side effects will be produced. Okay, so abuse liability, it is rated low when it is combined with atropine. That's because overdose will start precipitating the disturbing atropinic or anticholinergic side effects. Okay, so this is the reason why atropine is combined over here. Now, this particular drug is also not safe in small children. Children below 6 years of age, this particular drug is contraindicated. The reason is it produces respiratory depression, paralytic ileus, okay, ileum will be relaxed, okay, paralysis will be produced, toxic megacolon may be seen, even the response is variable in the small children. So this is the reason why it is contraindicated in the small children. Okay, below 6 years of age, this drug is not supposed to be given. Later on, loperamide came into picture and almost difenoxylate has gone out of use. Okay, now coming to the next drug, that is loperamide. Now loperamide, it is an opioid analog. Again, it is acting through the mu opioid receptors. Okay, and apart from this, it has a additional weak anticholinergic property also. Okay, this could add to its mechanism of action. Okay, again this particular drug, if you can compare with the previously utilized drug, that is codeine, this loperamide is more potent, that is less amount of drug is required to produce the same amount of action. Okay, now entry into the brain is also negligible. Okay, so because of this, CNS side effects are rare. So abuse liability is absent with this particular drug. No abuse liability. Even the duration of action is longer. 12 hours is the duration of action. Okay, so that is quite longer when you compare with codeine and diphenhydramine. Okay, so these are the several reasons why it is preferred over the earlier utilized agents. Okay, now this drug has anti-motility action, is what we have seen due to the interaction with the mu receptors, plus it has anti-secretory property also. That's what we have seen in the earlier subclass, anti-secretory drugs. Okay, opioids also have anti-secretory property. They could act by interacting through the calmodulin. This could be the mechanism of action. Okay. Now coming to the adverse effects of loperamide, they produce this particular drug produces abdominal cramps and rashes. These are quite common side effects. Apart from that, again this particular drug loperamide is also contraindicated in children below 4 years. The reason for this is it produces paralytic ileus, toxic megacolon, okay, abdominal distension may be seen, fatalities also have occurred. So this is the reason why loperamide is contraindicated in children below 4 years. Coming to the uses of anti-motility drugs as a whole. Okay. As such, these anti-motility drugs, those drugs which reduce the GI motility, these are utilized in diarrheas of certain pathologies, like say for example non-infective diarrheas wherein microbial infection is not involved, or mild traveler's diarrhea, okay, or when there is too frequent passage of watery stools, okay, when diarrhea is quite exhaustive, or idiopathic diarrheas which is associated with the AIDS. So these are the conditions wherein actually the anti-motility drugs are supposed to be preferred. So also they may be utilized in chronic diarrheas which are associated with the inflammatory bowel syndrome. Okay. However, the treatment should be short term. You are not supposed to continue the anti-motility drugs for longer period of time. Okay. So the diarrhea which is lasting for long period, it indicates that something may be wrong. So proper identification of the cause is very important before anti-motility drugs are instituted. Okay, because supposing if it is an infective diarrhea, supposing if a microorganism is involved, if it is an infectious diarrhea, we have also seen that how we can identify whether infection is involved and no, it is not involved. We have seen already in the earlier lectures. Okay. So these anti-motility drugs, these are totally contraindicated if infections are involved. So if you give anti-motility drugs to a person who is suffering from infectious diarrhea, what will happen is, due to the constipation which is instituted, the pathogen will remain in the intestine for a longer period of time, right? Clearance of that pathogen from the intestine will be prevented. So also if that microorganism is an invasive one, okay, so if you institute the anti-motility drug, it will remain in the intestines. It may even produce systemic invasions. It may reach your systemic circulation and it may produce several kind of complications, systemic complications, specifically with these particular infecting organisms if it is involved in the diarrhea. Okay, so generally these drugs have to be administered very carefully. They should be started very carefully in non-infective conditions and only in the milder situations, and that too for the short period of time. Okay, so these are some of the uses. Now apart from that, anti-motility drugs are also utilized to induce constipation, for deliberately to induce the constipation in certain individuals. Like say for example, if a particular patient has undergone anal surgery, okay, or to reduce the volume or the fluidity, okay, or in case of bag cleaning, supposing if the patient's ileum or colon, a part of ileum or colon is removed, so at that time the fecal matter is collected in a bag. Okay, so bag cleaning needs to be done every frequently, okay, after say a certain period of time. So at that time the amount of the stools, okay, it needs to be less. Okay, so the person is purposefully constipated okay, specifically during the back cleaning in such individuals. Now, this finishes the individual drugs. Okay, now there is a small note given over here, that is certain combinations are banned. Okay, so like say for example, the antidiarrheals containing the adsorbents like choline, pectin, etapalgite or activated charcoal. Then the antidiarrheals containing thallyl sulfathiazole or succinyl sulfathiazole, sulfaguanidine, neomycin, streptomycin, dihydrostreptomycin. Even for pediatric use, antidiarrheals containing diphenoxylate, loperamide, atropine, belladonna, hyoscyamin, halogenated hydroxyquinolines. Even fixed dose combinations of antidiarrheals with electrolytes should not be instituted. Fixed dose combination of loperamide with furazolidine is also banned. Even fixed dose combination of antidiarrheals with antihistaminics is also banned in India. Okay, so this finishes the chapter. The important questions pertaining to this chapter is formula of ORS. That's very, very important. The formula of ORS, very important from exam point of view. The constituents, the amount of the constituents, it's very important. Okay, what is the significance of individual constituent and the proportion in which it is used. Then next important question is management of diarrhea may be asked, in which full chapter has to be discussed in short. Then a note on rehydration therapy may be asked, which is a first approach, or a note on anti-motility or anti-secretory drugs may also be asked. Okay. Thank you.